What's up guys, LeopoldTheBrave here, and Grand Prix are still going strong in Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled. People are still speculating on what characters could be added, what skins could be made, who still needs skins, and even game modes that could be patched in. But what I don't think there's enough discussion about is what kind of tracks we could possibly get. If we take a look back at the previous Grand Prix, we already have a pretty interesting variety of tracks already. We already have 3 tracks based on levels from older Crash games with Twilight Tour, Prehistoric Playground, and Nina's Nightmare. For those who don't know, that's not just a generic Halloween-based track, there are some elements of the Academy of Evil from Twinsanity in there. Then we also have some original tracks like Neon Circus or the Christmas-themed Gingerbread Joyride, a crossover track with Spyro Circuit, and then finally a mishmash of old CTR tracks and old Crash locations in a post-apocalyptic wasteland with Mega Mix Mania. However, even with all that variety, I still think there's plenty of stuff from Crash's older titles to bring into CTR. So let's take a look at 5 track ideas that I have. So on the topic of bringing in old stuff, let's bring in an old location that we haven't even seen yet, Nitrous Oxide's home planet, Gasmaxia. Now this is one we could actually possibly even see next Grand Prix, as data miners have found data alluding to it. They found that Emperor Velo could possibly be coming to the game next month, and as we all know, he was part of Team Oxide in Crash Nitro Kart. Next, the codename for the Grand Prix is Toxic, and I think it was Canadian guy A who pointed this out, but Toxic could be in reference to toxic fumes, or toxic gas, Gasmaxia. Considering it's Oxide's home planet and apparently everyone there cares about racing, I expect the track to be absolutely insane. One detail I'd like to see in it is zero gravity. In one portion of Oxide Station, you actually go outside into space and float across a huge gap thanks to a boost ramp. I'd love to see an entire track work like that. Just huge canyons of toxic gas pits that you get to launch yourself over. Or they could even take it a step further and make it so most of the time on the track is spent with airtime rather than on the road. Plus, I think there'd be lots of opportunities for different and creative routes with how far you could launch yourself. It could be so crazy and full that each racer takes a different path each and every lap. Make it look like a track that only people who care that much about racing would have. There's plenty of opportunities for Gasmaxia. The second track on my list is a medieval-themed track, and no, not Sir Dan Medieval, I mean the Crash Bandicoot Warped level Medieval. It's actually pretty surprising how it's the first level in Crash Bandicoot Warped and it's not there yet. I can't imagine how difficult it'd be though, because a medieval-themed Grand Prix altogether would be pretty hard to think of. I'm not sure what characters they could add for it, and as for skins, we already have lots of mythical Renaissance creatures like orcs, dragons, and wizards with the Spyro Grand Prix. But we'll think about that some other time. Back to the track. There's plenty of ideas. You could race outside the castle courtyard or in the castle itself. But there's plenty of obstacles you could include, like the goats from the level in Crash Warped. Lots of the track obstacles in the game either make you spin out or squash you. None really leave that heavy hit effect that getting hit by a bomb or missile or Aku Aku mask does, so perhaps the goats could do that as they launch you up in the air with their horns. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Nina's Nightmare is the only Grand Prix track so far that utilizes the activation crates from the Crash Nitro Kart tracks. So the medieval track could have an activation crate that raises or lowers a drawbridge, either turning it into a straight track or a ramp. Throw in a couple pits of water from the moats to slow players down, and you've got yourself a unique track. Next up we have Orient Express from Crash Bandicoot Warped, which is pretty much the Great Wall of China. Now believe it or not, but this is actually the most requested track I've ever seen for CTR. And I can't really blame anyone who requests it because it's a really cool idea. In Crash Bandicoot Warped, you race along the Great Wall of China on the back of Purah, so it's pretty much like a race already, but it also has unique aesthetics and cool music. The only problem I see with this track is that it would mostly be a huge straight line. It'd be weird to have sharp turns on it or even have it loop all the way back around. But I have an idea. In some other racing games, there are tracks that are so long that all 3 laps count in one, so instead of 3 laps, they pretty much just have 3 checkpoints. And I think they could do this with an Orient Express map. It would definitely set it apart and make it unique compared to all the other tracks in the game. And they have it set so the wheels are disabled whenever you select a hovercraft, so they could easily have the number of laps disabled whenever you select this track, so it's always 1. The only obstacle I see to this track getting added, in this one-lap fashion at least, is Ring Rally. How would that work? It would be pretty easy for everyone to get the same amount of points with only 1 lap to cover. Let me know if you have any solutions in the comments. Track number 4 is a track based on the future levels from Crash Bandicoot Warped. Now, admittedly, we already have a few future level themed assets in the game. Android Alley has been remodeled into looking like a futuristic wonderland. Assembly Lane has the conveyor belts, and Hyperspaceway has all the lasers. But none of those combine all of them into one, not to mention there are still some missing elements. For one, there's none of those little spiky enemies from the future levels. Bringing them back could also bring back the flat tire mechanic from Nash's Boss Racing Crash Nitro Kart. Then there's also those green and red floating discs that determine whether you can be on them or not, those vacuum tubes or elevators to suck you to another part of the track, and so much more. Combining all this new stuff with the already pre-existing elements would make one crazy futuristic death trap of a track. Not only that, but a Grand Prix that brings this track in might finally grant Geary some skins. And Pinstripe too. I know he already has a legendary, but that one's been there since launch. He needs something new. Yeesh, remember back at launch when we were actually concerned about Papu Papu not getting anything? Then finally we come to track number 5. I'd love to see a track based off the warp rooms in the earlier Crash games. There would be 6 portions of the track. You start off in the warp room from Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. You go through a portal and end up in sort of a snowy mountain range like the boulder levels from Crash 2. Then you go through another portal and end up in the warp room from Crash 3, enter another portal there, which could take you to a motorcycle level or a jet ski level if they could perhaps find a way to make that work. Then finally it brings you to the warp room from Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex, which will take you to a jungle setting that takes place where those levels where you roll in a ball happens. And then of course it loops back around. Not only do I think this would be a fun idea for the last Grand Prix on my list, but for the last Grand Prix in general. It'd be one last way to have a super fun celebration of everything Crash. Plus, there's no specific characters they'd be tied to with this theme, so they could include just about anyone. Anyways, let me know what your track ideas are down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed my list. LeopoldTheBrave out.